The garage smelled like motor oil and broken promises. I wiped my hands on a greasy rag, staring at the motorcycle I'd been rebuilding for months. Anything to avoid going back inside that house. The engine parts scattered across my workbench looked more honest than anything waiting for me beyond that door. My name is Rhett Vossin, and I fix things for a living. Air conditioners, heating systems, broken appliances, you name it, I can make it work again. But some things, I was learning, stay broken no matter how hard you try. The raised voices from inside cut through the October air like a knife. My 16-year-old daughter Dasha was going at it with her mother again, their argument echoing through the thin walls of our suburban New England home. You think Dad doesn't know? Dasha's voice cracked with teenage fury. He isn't as dumb as you think, but you're pathetic for cheating on him while he's the only one who cares that you're alive. I dropped the wrench. It clattered against the concrete floor, the sound lost in the sudden ringing in my ears. Cheating. The word hung in the air like smoke from an engine fire. I stood there, frozen, as my daughter continued her verbal assault on my wife of 18 years. At least pretend you care about this family, Dasha shouted. Or are you too busy with your therapy sessions? Zoya's response was muffled, but I caught enough words to make my stomach turn. Something about complicated situations, and you wouldn't understand. I walked to the side door of the garage, pressing my ear against the cold metal. Through the window, I could see them in the kitchen, Zoya in her hospital scrubs, looking tired and defensive, while Dasha stood with her arms crossed, every inch the righteous teenager. Mom, I'm not stupid. I know what's going on. My wife Zoya had been in and out of the hospital for the past 3 months. Stress-related issues, she'd told me. The doctors recommended extended observation and therapy sessions. As the operations manager for the regional medical center, she had access to the best care available. I'd supported her completely, picked up extra service calls to cover the medical bills insurance wouldn't touch, handled all the household responsibilities while she focused on getting better, made excuses to friends and neighbors when they asked why she was never around anymore. What a fool I'd been. I slipped back into the house through the basement entrance, my work boots silent on the stairs. The argument had moved to the living room, and I could hear every word now. Your father works himself to the bone, Dasha was saying. He's out there fixing other people's problems while you're here breaking his heart. You don't understand adult relationships, Zoya replied, her voice taking on that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. Sometimes people need different kinds of support. Support? Is that what you call it? I crept closer to the doorway, staying in the shadows. Zoya was pacing near the window, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. She looked healthier than she had in months, skin glowing, hair styled, makeup perfect. Not exactly the picture of someone struggling with medical issues. Your father and I have been growing apart for years, Zoya continued. He's a good man, but he doesn't understand my world, my career, my needs. So you found someone who does? Dasha's voice dripped with sarcasm. Real mature, Mom. Zoya's phone buzzed, and I watched her face light up as she read the message. The smile that crossed her lips made my chest tighten. I hadn't seen her smile like that in years, certainly not for me. I have to go, Zoya said, grabbing her purse. I have a therapy session tonight. At 9 p.m.? On a Saturday? Recovery doesn't follow a schedule, Dasha. After Zoya left, I found Dasha sitting on the couch, staring at the muted television. She looked up when I entered, her eyes red with unshed tears. How long have you known? I asked quietly. She shrugged. A couple months. I kept hoping you'd figure it out yourself. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was just being a dramatic teenager? She had a point. I'd been so focused on being the supportive husband that I'd ignored every red flag waving in front of my face. Who is he? I asked. Some guy from the hospital, Aleksei something, Goes by Lex. He's a physical therapist. Dasha pulled out her phone and showed me a social media profile. The man in the photo was younger than me, with the kind of sculpted features that belonged in a magazine. She thinks she's being sneaky, but her location sharing is still on. Want to guess where she spends her therapy sessions? The address on the screen showed a downtown apartment complex. Definitely not the hospital. That night, I waited until Dasha was asleep, then went to Zoya's home office. She'd always been careless with her passwords, used the same one for everything. Our wedding date, which felt like cruel irony now. Her laptop opened easily. The email account painted a picture that made me feel sick. Months of correspondence with Aleksei Orlov, starting professional and gradually becoming intimate. Plans for overnight stays disguised as medical necessity. Discussions about my work schedule and when I'd be out of town. They'd been planning this for months. The text messages were worse. Zoya complaining about our marriage, calling me reliable but boring. Lex encouraging her to think about what she really wanted from life. Photos I definitely wasn't supposed to see. I copied everything to a flash drive, my hands shaking with rage and humiliation. 18 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with a conversation or even a fight, but with sneaking around like teenagers while I played the part of the oblivious husband. The final insult was a calendar entry for the following week. Overnight therapy session. Tell Rhett it's mandatory medical supervision. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, processing what I'd learned. My wife was cheating on me with a hospital employee, using her medical situation as cover. Our daughter knew and had been protecting me from the truth, and I'd been enabling the whole thing by being understanding and supportive. The old Rhett would have confronted Zoya immediately, demanded explanations, tried to work things out, suggested marriage counseling. But something had shifted inside me as I read those messages. The humiliation burned away any desire for reconciliation. If Zoya wanted to play games, I'd show her how the game was really played. I spent the rest of the night planning. By sunrise, I had a strategy that would expose every lie she'd told and make sure she faced consequences for her choices. The first step was gathering evidence. Monday morning, I called my lawyer before Zoya woke up. Tom Bradley had handled the legal work when I started my repair business 5 years ago. He was a straight shooter who understood working-class problems. Divorce? Tom's voice was careful over the phone. Rhett, are you sure? Sometimes these things can be worked out. Not this time. I need to know what I'm dealing with legally. Okay. Do you have grounds? Adultery. I have evidence. Tom was quiet for a moment. Bring me everything you've got. Don't do anything rash in the meantime. Document everything, but don't confront her yet. We need to be smart about this. I scheduled an appointment for that afternoon, then went about my normal routine. Zoya came downstairs around 8, dressed for work, acting like nothing had changed. How was your therapy session last night? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Helpful, she replied, without looking at me. Dr. Martinez thinks the overnight observations are really making a difference. Another lie. According to her messages, Dr. Martinez had signed off on her treatment weeks ago. The overnight stays were pure fiction. That's great, honey. I'm glad you're feeling better. She kissed my cheek before leaving, and I had to resist the urge to pull away. Everything about her felt contaminated now. Every touch, every word, every moment of concern I'd wasted on her fake illness. After she left, I started my real work. First, I changed all the passwords on our shared accounts. Bank accounts, cloud storage, streaming services, everything. I transferred our joint calendar to a new account under my name only. If Zoya wanted to coordinate her affairs, she'd have to do it without using our shared resources. Next, I called the hospital's billing department. As Zoya's husband, I had access to her medical records and billing information. The customer service representative was happy to help me understand the charges. Let me pull up the account, she said. Mrs. Vossin? Okay, I see the issue. You're being billed for extended observation periods, but Those were discontinued 6 weeks ago. The charges since then appear to be… That's strange. What's strange? Well, the room charges are listed, but there's no corresponding medical supervision. It looks like someone authorized private room access without clinical oversight. That's unusual for our billing system. I requested copies of all billing records and visitor logs for the past 3 months. The hospital was required to track everyone who accessed patient rooms for insurance and liability purposes. I can have those ready this afternoon, the representative said. Will you be picking them up, or should we mail them? I'll pick them up. Tom Bradley's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place that screamed small-town lawyer, but in a good way. Tom himself was in his 50s, with gray hair and the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen every kind of human drama. I spread the printed emails and text messages across his desk. Tom read through them carefully, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. This is pretty damning, he said finally. She's been using medical necessity as cover for an extramarital affair. That's fraud, potentially. Can we use it? Absolutely. New Hampshire is a fault-based divorce state. Adultery is grounds for divorce, and it can affect property division and alimony. The fact that she's been deceptive about medical expenses makes it worse. Tom leaned back in his chair. What's your goal here, Rhett? Quick settlement, or do you want to make a point? I want her to face consequences. Real ones. Then we do this right. File for divorce citing adultery, request a full accounting of marital assets, and demand reimbursement for any fraudulent medical expenses. We'll also want to address custody arrangements for your daughter. Dasha knows what's going on. She's been covering for me. That helps. 16 is old enough for her preferences to carry weight in custody decisions. Tom made another note. I'll need you to gather more documentation. Bank records, credit card statements, anything that shows the financial impact of her deception. I left Tom's office feeling more focused than I had in months. For the first time since discovering the affair, I had a plan that didn't involve confrontation or drama. Just cold, methodical justice. The hospital billing office was efficient. Within an hour, I had 3 months of visitor logs and room charges. The pattern was obvious once you knew what to look for. Aleksei Orlov had badge access to Zoya's room during every overnight stay. The visitor timestamps showed him arriving after regular hours and leaving before morning shifts began. On nights when Zoya was supposedly under medical observation, the only person observing her was her lover. I made copies of everything and added them to my growing file. That evening, Dasha was doing homework at the kitchen table when I got home. Zoya was at another therapy session. Dad? Dasha looked up from her math textbook. Are you okay? You seem different today. I'm handling the situation, I said, but I need your help with something. I explained what I was doing, the legal approach, the evidence gathering, the plan to expose Zoya's lies through proper channels rather than emotional confrontation. You're not going to just yell at her? Dasha seemed surprised. Yelling won't fix this, but making sure she faces real consequences might. Dasha reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Then you'll want this. It was a school permission slip for a field trip, signed with my name in handwriting that definitely wasn't mine. Attached to it was a note in Zoya's handwriting. Dasha will be staying overnight with her father this weekend. I have mandatory therapy sessions Friday and Saturday night. The dates matched up with text messages I'd seen between Zoya and Lex, planning a romantic weekend while I was supposedly taking care of our daughter. She forged your signature, Dasha explained. She's been doing it for months, changing custody schedules to match her appointments. I stared at the paper, feeling a new kind of anger. It was one thing to cheat on me. It was another to drag our daughter into the deception, making her complicit in the lies. Why did you keep this? I asked. I figured you'd need proof eventually. Mom thinks she's so smart. but she's been sloppy about everything. I hugged my daughter, feeling proud and sad at the same time. Proud that she'd had the wisdom to protect evidence, sad that a 16-year-old had to navigate her parents' marital problems. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we let the legal system handle it." The next morning, I filed for divorce. Tom had prepared a comprehensive petition citing adultery, fraud, and deception. Along with it, we submitted copies of the emails, text messages, hospital records, and forged permission slips. Zoya's response was swift and predictable. I was at a service call, fixing a broken furnace in a client's basement, when my phone started ringing. First Zoya, then her mother Vera, then Zoya's sister, then Vera again. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages were a mix of outrage, denial, and emotional manipulation. Zoya claimed the evidence was taken illegally. Vera accused me of abandoning a sick woman. The sister threatened to make my life difficult if I didn't drop the divorce. None of them addressed the actual issue, that Zoya had been lying to everyone for months. That evening, I found Vera's Mercedes parked in my driveway. Through the living room window, I could see her gesturing dramatically while Zoya sat on the couch, looking defeated. I entered through the garage, wanting to hear what they were saying before they knew I was home. "Completely unreasonable," Vera was saying. "Marriage is about supporting each other through difficult times. He's supposed to be there for you." "I know, Mom, but he has evidence, real evidence." "Evidence of what? You getting the medical care you need?" "It's more complicated than that." "No, it isn't. You've been sick, you've been getting treatment, and your husband decided to abandon you instead of being supportive. That's the story, and that's what we're sticking to." I stepped into the living room. Both women looked up, Vera with defiance, Zoya with something that might have been shame. "Hello, Vera," I said calmly. "Zoya." "Rhett." Vera stood up, all 5 feet of her radiating indignation. "We need to talk." Vera Kozlov had never liked me. From the day I'd started dating her daughter, she'd made it clear that a working-class repairman wasn't good enough for her precious Zoya. The fact that I'd built a successful business from nothing didn't matter. I still showed up to work in a truck with my name on the side instead of a suit and briefcase. "This divorce nonsense has to stop," Vera announced, settling back onto my couch like she owned it. "Zoya has been through enough without you making things worse." "Making things worse?" I kept my voice level. "How exactly am I making things worse?" "By abandoning your wife when she needs you most. She's been receiving medical treatment, and instead of being supportive, you're attacking her." Zoya hadn't told her mother the truth. Of course she hadn't. "What kind of medical treatment?" I asked. "Stress management and therapy. The doctors recommended extended observation to monitor her condition." I looked at Zoya, who was staring at her hands. "Is that what you told her?" "Rhett, please," Zoya started. "No," I interrupted. "Your mother deserves to know the truth. Tell her about Aleksei." Vera's expression shifted slightly. "Who's Aleksei?" The silence stretched until I answered for my wife. "Aleksei Orlov, physical therapist at the hospital. The man your daughter has been having an affair with for the past 3 months. "That's ridiculous," Vera snapped, but I could see doubt creeping into her eyes. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the text message screenshots. Vera read it, her face going pale. "This could be faked," she said weakly. "The hospital visitor logs aren't fake. Neither are the billing records showing room charges without medical supervision, or the forged permission slips she's been using to rearrange custody schedules." Vera looked at her daughter. "Zoya?" "It's complicated, Mom." "Complicated?" Vera's voice rose. "You've been lying to everyone?" "I didn't plan for this to happen. It just developed." I watched Vera process this information. For all her faults, she wasn't stupid. The evidence was overwhelming, and even she couldn't spin it into something innocent. "Well," Vera said finally, "these things happen. Marriage is hard work, and sometimes people make mistakes. The important thing is working through it. I stared at her. Mistakes? Everyone deserves a second chance, Rhett, especially family. She's been lying to me for months, using fake medical emergencies to cover an affair, forging my signature on school documents, and you think this is just a mistake? People do foolish things when they're unhappy, Vera replied. The question is whether you're man enough to forgive and rebuild your marriage. The manipulation was breathtaking. Somehow, in Vera's world, I was the villain for not accepting my wife's betrayal with grace and understanding. I'm filing for divorce, I said. That's final. We'll see about that. Vera stood up. Come on, Zoya. We're leaving. After they left, Dasha emerged from her room where she'd been hiding during the confrontation. Grandma Vera is really something, she said. Your grandmother has always believed the rules don't apply to her family. What do you think she meant by, we'll see about that? I found out the next morning. I arrived at my first service call to find the client looking uncomfortable. Mrs. Patterson was an elderly widow whose heating system I'd been maintaining for 3 years. Rhett, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to cancel today's appointment. Is there a problem with the furnace? No, well, I heard some things about your personal situation. I don't feel comfortable having you in my home right now. My stomach sank. What did you hear? That you're divorcing your wife while she's receiving cancer treatment. That you're trying to take her money and leave her with nothing. Mrs. Patterson, that's not... I'm sorry, Rhett. I just can't get involved. 3 more clients canceled that day. By evening, I'd lost nearly a week's worth of work. Vera's campaign was just getting started. Over the next few days, the story spread through town like a virus. Zoya's family had crafted a narrative that painted me as a heartless husband abandoning his sick wife. The details were carefully chosen, enough truth to sound believable, enough lies to make me look terrible. Yes, Zoya had been in the hospital. Yes, I was filing for divorce. Yes, I was seeking a favorable financial settlement. But the context, the affair, the lies, the fraud, was completely omitted. My business phone stopped ringing. Neighbors avoided eye contact. At the grocery store, I caught people whispering and pointing. The worst part was that some of them seemed to believe they were taking the moral high ground by shunning me. This is insane, I told Tom during an emergency meeting at his office. They're destroying my reputation with lies. Small towns love a good scandal, Tom replied. But this will backfire on them once the truth comes out in court. In the meantime, we need to be strategic. Strategic how? Document everything. The business you're losing, the social ostracism, the harassment. It all supports our case that Zoya's family is engaged in a coordinated campaign of retaliation. That doesn't help me pay my bills this month. No, but it helps us when we're calculating damages. If they want to play hardball, we'll make sure there are consequences. Tom was right, but it didn't make the situation easier to live with. I'd built my business on reputation and word-of-mouth referrals. Vera's campaign was attacking the foundation of my livelihood. That weekend, things escalated further. I was working in the garage when I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Vera's Mercedes, followed by a car I didn't recognize. Vera emerged from her car along with 2 people I'd never seen before, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit and a woman with a briefcase. Zoya got out of the second car with a man who had to be Aleksei. He was younger than his photos suggested, with the kind of confident posture that screamed, "I work out." They approached the front door like a delegation. I met them on the porch, not inviting them inside. Rhett, Vera began, we're here to discuss a reasonable solution to this situation. There's nothing to discuss. I'm divorcing your daughter. The man in the suit stepped forward. Mr. Vossin, I'm David Klein, Mrs. Vossin's attorney. We'd like to propose a settlement that avoids the unpleasantness of a contested divorce. I have an attorney. Talk to him. We're prepared to be very generous, Klein continued. 50-50 split of all assets, no alimony demands, shared custody of your daughter. All you have to do is agree not to pursue adultery charges. I looked at Aleksei, who was standing slightly behind Zoya like a bodyguard. And what about him? Mr. Orlov is here as Mrs. Vossin's support system, Klein replied smoothly. He's been providing therapeutic assistance during her medical treatment. Therapeutic assistance. I couldn't keep the sarcasm out of my voice. The important thing is moving forward constructively, Vera interjected, for everyone's sake, especially Dasha's. The threat was subtle but clear. They were willing to drag our daughter into their campaign if I didn't cooperate. Here's my counteroffer, I said. Zoya can have whatever the court decides she's entitled to after we present evidence of her adultery and fraud. She can explain to a judge why she was billing insurance for fake medical stays while having an affair. Klein's expression hardened. That would be unfortunate for everyone involved. These matters tend to get messy when they're litigated publicly. Then maybe your client should have thought about that before she started lying to everyone. After they left, I called Tom immediately. They're trying to intimidate you, he said, after I described the encounter. The fact that they brought the boyfriend shows how desperate they are. They know their position is weak. What about their threat to involve Dasha? Empty. Your daughter is 16 and knows the truth. Any family court judge will take her preferences seriously, especially given the evidence we have. So what's our next move? We let them make the next mistake. They're already overplaying their hand with the public relations campaign. The more desperate they get, the more likely they are to do something that hurts their case. Tom was right about them making mistakes. The next one came from an unexpected source. Monday afternoon, I was replacing a water heater when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Dasha's school. Mr. Vossin, this is Principal Morrison. We need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident involving your daughter. I dropped everything and drove to the school, my mind racing through possibilities. When I arrived, I found Dasha sitting in the principal's office looking defiant rather than upset. What happened? I asked. Principal Morrison, a thin man who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, consulted his notes. Your daughter was involved in a physical altercation with another student. She pushed Jennifer Walsh during lunch period. Jennifer said my mom was a cheater, Dasha explained. She said everyone knows about it and that you're a jerk for divorcing her. Language, Miss Vossin, Morrison said automatically. What exactly did Jennifer say? I asked. Morrison looked uncomfortable. According to witnesses, Miss Walsh made some inappropriate comments about your family situation. However, physical violence is never acceptable. Who told Jennifer about our family situation? I'm not sure that's relevant. It's relevant because my wife's family has been spreading lies about me around town. Now it's affecting my daughter at school. Morrison sighed. Mr. Vossin, I understand you're going through a difficult time, but we can't have students fighting over their parents' personal problems. What's Jennifer's punishment? She'll receive a warning about inappropriate comments. And Dasha? 3-day suspension for physical violence. I looked at my daughter, who was staring at the floor. Dasha, was Jennifer the first person to say something, or have other kids been talking about this? Other kids, she admitted. Jennifer was just the worst about it. The scope of Vera's campaign was becoming clear. She hadn't just targeted my business and social relationships. She'd made sure the gossip reached my daughter's school. Principal Morrison, I said, I want to know who's been spreading information about my family to students at this school. I can't reveal. You can and you will, or I'll have my attorney file a complaint about harassment of a minor. Someone has been feeding personal information about my family to teenagers. That's not gossip. That's a coordinated attack on my daughter's well-being. Morrison looked even more uncomfortable. I'll look into it. You do that. As we left the school, Dasha was quiet until we reached the truck. I'm sorry, Dad. I know I shouldn't have pushed her. You shouldn't have, but I understand why you did. Everyone's talking about us. They think you're this terrible person who's abandoning Mom while she's sick. And when I try to explain what really happened, They don't believe me. What have you been telling them? The truth. That Mom's been cheating and lying about it, but Jennifer's mom works at the hospital, and she says Mom's been getting legitimate treatment for stress and anxiety. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Jennifer Walsh's mother worked in the hospital's administrative department. She'd have access to Zoya's official medical records, which would show the legitimate parts of her treatment while omitting the fraudulent overnight stays. Vera had found the perfect source to legitimize her version of events. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I'd spent 2 weeks playing defense, watching Vera's campaign destroy my reputation while I tried to take the high road. That approach wasn't working. If they wanted to fight dirty, I'd show them what dirty really looked like. The first step was gathering intelligence. My friend Jacek Kowalski owned a gym downtown that doubled as an unofficial gathering place for local cops, firefighters, and other city workers. Jacek was an ex-police detective who'd left the force after a back injury and used his settlement money to open the gym. He still had connections throughout the city's bureaucracy. "You look terrible," Jacek said when I walked into his office Tuesday morning. He was a big man with graying hair and the kind of direct manner that came from years of dealing with criminals and politicians, often the same people. "I need help," I told him. "The divorce? I heard some things. Sounded like nonsense." I explained the real situation, the affair, the lies, the campaign against me. Jacek listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. "So you want to fight back?" he said when I finished. "I want to expose the truth." "Same thing in this case." Jacek leaned back in his chair. "What do you need?" "Information. Vera's been spreading her version of events, but she's had to tell lies to make it work. Lies can be disproven." "You want me to dig into the hospital records?" "I want to know who has access to what information and who's been sharing it inappropriately. My daughter's getting harassed at school because someone's been leaking selective details about Zoya's medical treatment." Jacek smiled. "That I can help with. Medical privacy violations are serious business. If someone's been sharing patient information to help with a public relations campaign, they could lose their job. How long will it take?" "Give me a few days. I still know people." While Jacek worked his contacts, I focused on documenting the damage to my business. Every canceled appointment, every lost client, every whispered conversation I overheard, all of it went into a file that Tom could use to calculate financial damages. The pattern was clear. Vera had targeted my most vulnerable clients first. Elderly women living alone, people who depended on word-of-mouth recommendations, anyone who might be swayed by emotional appeals about abandoning a sick wife. But she'd made a crucial mistake. Several of my clients had asked direct questions about Zoya's medical condition, wanting to understand why I was being heartless. That gave me an opening. I started making phone calls. "Mrs. Chen, this is Rhett Vossin. I understand you have some concerns about my personal situation." "Oh, Rhett. Yes, Well, I heard your wife has cancer, and you're divorcing her anyway. It just seems—" "Mrs. Chen, my wife doesn't have cancer. She's been having an affair with a hospital employee and using fake medical emergencies to cover it up. I have documentation from the hospital proving it." Silence on the other end of the line. "I don't expect you to take my word for it," I continued. "But I wanted you to know that what you've heard isn't the complete story. When this goes to court, the evidence will be public record." Oh my, I had no idea. Vera Kozlov has been telling people that I'm abandoning a sick woman. What she hasn't mentioned is that her daughter has been lying to everyone, including her own family, for months. I made similar calls to a dozen former clients. Not trying to win them back immediately, just planting seeds of doubt about the story they'd been told. The results were immediate. By Thursday, 3 clients had called to reschedule canceled appointments. Word was getting around that there might be more to the story than Vera's version. Friday afternoon, Jacek called with information. Your instincts were right, he said. Someone at the hospital has been sharing information about your wife's medical records. Jennifer Walsh's mother, Patricia, works in medical billing. She's been telling people that Zoya's treatment was legitimate, but she's only been sharing partial information. Is that illegal? Depends on how she's doing it. If she's accessing records she doesn't need for her job or sharing specific medical details, then yes. HIPAA violations can result in termination and criminal charges. Can you prove it? Working on it, but I found something else interesting. Your wife's boyfriend, Aleksei Orlov? He's got some problems. What kind of problems? Financial problems. He's behind on student loans, credit cards, car payments. The guy's drowning in debt despite having a decent job. So maybe his interest in your wife isn't purely romantic. She's got access to hospital resources, connections, and a husband with a successful business. From his perspective, she's a meal ticket. That was an angle I hadn't considered. Aleksei wasn't just stealing my wife, he was potentially using her to solve his financial problems. Can you get details on his debts? Some of it's public record, court filings, liens, that sort of thing. Give me another day or two. That weekend, Vera made her next move. Saturday morning, I found a letter slipped under my front door. It was from David Klein, Zoya's attorney, formally requesting that I stop harassing his client's family and friends. The letter accused me of making defamatory statements about Zoya's medical treatment and threatening to spread false information about her personal relationships. It demanded that I cease all contact with Zoya's relatives and stop discussing the divorce with mutual acquaintances. The letter was clearly designed to intimidate me into silence. It also revealed that my phone calls to former clients had gotten back to Vera, which meant her information network was better than I'd realized. I forwarded the letter to Tom, who called me an hour later. "This is actually good news," he said. "They're trying to silence you because your version of events is gaining traction. That means they're worried. What about their claims that I'm harassing people?" Nonsense. You have every right to correct false information that's damaging your reputation and business. In fact, their letter might constitute an attempt to interfere with your livelihood. So, I keep making phone calls? You keep telling the truth. Just document everything carefully. Sunday brought another surprise. I was working in the garage when Dasha came out with her laptop. "Dad, you need to see this." She'd been monitoring social media discussions about our family situation. Most of it was the usual small-town gossip, but one post caught my attention. Patricia Walsh, Jennifer's mother, had shared a long Facebook post about the importance of supporting women during medical crises. The post didn't mention our family by name, but the implications were clear. She described a local woman who was struggling with stress-related health issues while her husband abandoned her for financial gain. The post had dozens of comments, most of them expressing outrage at the unnamed husband's behavior. "She's using social media to spread Grandma Vera's version," Dasha explained. "Look at the comments." I scrolled through them, recognizing names from around town. People I'd known for years were expressing disgust at my supposed behavior, based entirely on Patricia Walsh's carefully worded post. "Can we respond?" I asked. "Not directly. That would just create more drama. But we could share some facts that contradict her story." "Like what?" Dasha grinned. "Like Mom's own social media posts." She pulled up Zoya's Instagram account. Over the past 3 months, while supposedly struggling with serious medical issues, Zoya had posted dozens of photos. Restaurant meals, shopping trips, spa visits, scenic drives, none of which looked like the activities of someone undergoing intensive medical treatment. "She's been documenting her affair without realizing it," Dasha explained. "Look at the timestamps and locations." She was right. Several photos were taken during times when Zoya was supposedly in the hospital for overnight observation. Others showed her at restaurants and locations near Aleksei's apartment. "Can we prove she was with him?" "Some of the photos have location tags, and look at this one." Dasha showed me a photo of Zoya at an upscale restaurant smiling at the camera. In the background, barely visible, was a man who looked like Aleksei. "She posted evidence of her own affair," I said. "Gets better. Look at the comments." The comments were from friends and family expressing concern about her health and praising her strength during a difficult time. Zoya had been accepting sympathy and support from people while simultaneously documenting her deception. "This is perfect," I told Dasha. "Screenshot everything." Monday morning, I took the social media evidence to Tom's office. He reviewed it with the same methodical attention he'd given everything else. "This is devastating to their credibility," he said finally. "She's been accepting sympathy for a medical condition while posting evidence that she was actually having an affair. Can we use it in court?" "Absolutely. Social media posts are admissible evidence, but more importantly, we can use this to counter their public relations campaign." "How?" "By letting the right people know that there's contradictory evidence, not making accusations, just pointing out inconsistencies that people can evaluate for themselves." That afternoon, I got a call from Jacek. "I've got what you need," he said. "Patricia Walsh has been accessing your wife's medical records outside her normal job responsibilities. She pulled the files 6 times in the past 2 weeks, always after hours. That's a clear HIPAA violation. Can you prove it? Hospital computer systems log everything. I've got a friend in IT who can document the inappropriate access. Patricia's about to have a very bad day." "What about Aleksei's financial situation?" "Even better. He's facing a wage garnishment for defaulted student loans. His car's about to be repossessed. And get this, he's been borrowing money from co-workers at the hospital." "Borrowing money for what?" "Rent, car payments, basic living expenses. The guy's broke despite making decent money. Turns out he's got a gambling problem. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips to Connecticut." The picture was becoming clearer. Aleksei wasn't just having an affair with my wife. He was potentially using her to solve his financial problems. Zoya had access to hospital resources, connections with wealthy patients and donors, and a husband with a successful business. "There's one more thing," Jacek continued. "Aleksei's been telling people at the hospital that he's going to marry your wife as soon as the divorce is final. He's been talking about starting a private practice with her connections and financial backing. He's planning to use her money to start a business? Looks like it, and she probably doesn't realize how broke he really is." That evening, I shared the new information with Dasha. Her reaction was immediate and angry. "Mom's being used," she said. "She thinks she found true love, but he just wants her money. How do you think she'd react if she knew the truth about his finances?" "She'd be furious. Mom's always been careful about money. She grew up poor before Grandma Vera married rich. Then maybe it's time she learned the truth about her boyfriend." "How?" I smiled. "By letting her discover it herself." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to convince Zoya that Aleksei was using her, I would create a situation where she'd discover his financial problems on her own. It started with a conversation I had with Tom on Tuesday morning. "What if someone were to file a complaint with the hospital about HIPAA violations?" I asked. "Hypothetically, the hospital would be required to investigate. If they found evidence of inappropriate access to medical records, the employee responsible could face termination and criminal charges. And if that employee happened to be the mother of a student who's been harassing my daughter at school, that would be unfortunate for the employee, but justice has a way of working itself out." Tom's smile was carefully neutral, but I could see he understood exactly what I was suggesting. That afternoon, I visited the hospital's patient advocacy office. The advocate, a middle-aged woman named Carol Stevens, listened carefully as I explained my concerns about medical privacy. "Someone has been sharing details about my wife's treatment with people in the community," I told her. "My daughter is being harassed at school because of information that should be confidential." "That's a serious allegation, Mr. Vossin. Do you have any evidence?" I showed her Patricia Walsh's Facebook post and explained how the details matched information that would only be available through medical records. "I'm not making accusations," I said. "I just want to make sure my family's privacy is being protected." Carol took detailed notes and promised a thorough investigation. HIPAA violations were federal crimes, and hospitals took them very seriously. "We'll review all access to your wife's medical records over the past 3 months," she assured me. "If we find any inappropriate activity, we'll take immediate action." The next phase of my plan required Jacek's help. "I need you to make sure Aleksei finds out about the HIPAA investigation," I told him Wednesday evening at his gym. "Why?" "Because when Patricia Walsh gets fired, Aleksei will realize that his girlfriend's family isn't as powerful as he thought, and when he starts worrying about his own job security, he might make some desperate decisions." Jacek grinned. "You want him to panic." "I want him to show his true colors." "What if he just keeps his mouth shut?" "Then we move to phase 2. But I don't think he will. Desperate people make stupid choices." I was right. Friday afternoon, the hospital's investigation concluded. Patricia Walsh was terminated immediately for accessing patient records without authorization. The hospital also reported the violations to federal authorities, which meant Patricia could face criminal charges. The news spread through the hospital within hours. By evening, it was all over town. Saturday morning, Jennifer Walsh approached Dasha at the grocery store. "Your dad got my mom fired," she said, loud enough for other shoppers to hear. "Your mom got herself fired by breaking the law," Dasha replied calmly. "She was just trying to help people understand the truth. The truth is that she violated federal privacy laws to help spread lies about my family. Now she's facing criminal charges because of it." I watched the exchange from the next aisle, proud of how Dasha handled herself. She'd learned to fight back without losing her composure. The confrontation also served another purpose. Word would get back to Vera's network that there were real consequences for their campaign against me. Sunday brought the reaction I'd been hoping for. Dasha was at a friend's house when Zoya arrived unexpectedly. She looked stressed and angry, a combination I hadn't seen since the early days of our relationship. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About this vindictive campaign you're running against my family." I gestured to the living room. "Let's sit down. Patricia Walsh lost her job because of you." Patricia Walsh lost her job because she broke federal law. She was accessing your medical records inappropriately and sharing the information to damage my reputation. She was trying to help people understand. She was helping your mother spread lies, and now she's facing criminal charges for it. Zoya sat down heavily on the couch. "This has gotten completely out of hand. I agree. Your family started a campaign to destroy my reputation in business. Now, there are consequences. All we wanted was for you to be reasonable about the divorce." "Reasonable? You mean accept your adultery without complaint?" "I mean, recognize that our marriage was over anyway. This didn't have to become a war." I studied her face. She looked tired and older than I remembered. The stress of maintaining lies while managing an affair was clearly taking its toll. "Where's Aleksei today?" I asked. "What does that matter?" "Just curious. You two spend every weekend together, but you're here alone." Zoya's expression shifted slightly. "He had some things to take care of." "Financial things?" "I don't know what you mean." "I mean the wage garnishment for his student loans, or the car repossession notice, or the gambling debts." Zoya went very still. "How do you know about that?" "The same way I know about everything else. I pay attention. Lex told me he had some temporary financial difficulties." "Temporary?" "He owes more than $40,000 to various creditors. His wages are being garnished. His car's about to be repossessed, and he's been borrowing money from coworkers at the hospital." "That's not," he said. I could see her processing this information, connecting it to things she'd probably noticed but ignored. "What exactly did he tell you about his finances?" I asked. "That he was between investment periods, that he'd had some bad luck with the stock market. He's been gambling online, poker, sports betting, casino trips. That's where his money went. Zoya's face had gone pale. You're lying. Am I? When's the last time he paid for dinner, or a hotel room, or anything else? She didn't answer, but I could see the realization dawning. Aleksei had been letting her pay for everything while spinning stories about temporary financial setbacks. He loves me, she said weakly. He loves your money and your connections. He's been telling people at the hospital that he's going to marry you and start a private practice with your financial backing. That's not true. Ask him. Tonight. Ask him about his debts, his gambling, his plans for your money. See what he says. Zoya left without another word. I didn't hear from her for the rest of the weekend. Monday morning brought news that exceeded my expectations. Dasha called me during my lunch break, excitement clear in her voice. Dad, you need to hear this. Mom and Lex had a huge fight last night. The neighbors could hear them screaming at each other. What happened? Mrs. Rodriguez lives in the apartment next to his. She said Mom was yelling about lies and money, and Lex was trying to explain something. Then Mom threw something at his window and drove away. How do you know all this? Mrs. Rodriguez's daughter goes to my school. She texted everyone about it. So Zoya had confronted Aleksei about his finances, and it hadn't gone well. I felt a moment of satisfaction, followed immediately by concern about what would happen next. Have you talked to your mom since then? She called this morning. She sounded like she'd been crying. She wants to meet with you tonight. Did she say what about? No, but she kept asking if you'd really drop the adultery charges if she agreed to a fair settlement. That evening, Zoya arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and no makeup. This wasn't the confident woman who'd been conducting an affair for months. This was someone who'd just had her world turned upside down. You were right, she said without preamble. About what? About Lex, about everything. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same place where we'd shared thousands of meals during our marriage. He admitted it. The gambling, the debts, all of it. He said he was going to tell me eventually, after we got married. After you'd already paid off his debts, you mean? He had a plan. We were going to use the money from the divorce settlement to start a private practice. He already had investors lined up, equipment picked out, office space scouted. Investors? Or creditors? Both, apparently. He owed money to some very unpleasant people who don't take no for an answer. I felt a chill. What kind of people? The kind who break legs when they don't get paid. He's been getting threats, Rhett. Phone calls, visits to his apartment. That's why he was so eager to marry me quickly. The scope of Aleksei's deception was breathtaking. He hadn't just been using Zoya for money. He'd been planning to use her to escape dangerous creditors. Where is he now? Gone. He packed up and left town this morning. Didn't even give notice at the hospital. And left you to deal with the consequences. Zoya nodded, tears starting to flow. I've been such a fool. I threw away 18 years of marriage for a man who was just using me. I should have felt vindicated. My wife had finally realized the truth about her lover, and justice had been served. But looking at her sitting there, broken and humiliated, I mostly felt sad. What do you want from me, Zoya? I want to end this war between us. I want to settle the divorce fairly and try to rebuild some kind of relationship for Dasha's sake. What about your family? Vera's campaign against me? I'll talk to them. I'll make them stop. And the adultery? I won't contest it. I'll admit fault in the divorce proceedings. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but she just looked tired and defeated. Okay, I said finally. I'll have Tom draw up a settlement agreement. Thank you. As she got up to leave, I had one more question. Zoya? Why him? Why risk everything for someone you barely knew? She paused at the door. Because he made me feel special, important, like I was the most fascinating woman he'd ever met. And I didn't? You made me feel safe, comfortable, but not exciting. After she left, I sat in the quiet kitchen thinking about what she'd said. Safe and comfortable weren't romantic qualities, but they were the foundation of real relationships. Aleksei had offered excitement and passion, but it had all been built on lies. The irony was that Zoya had thrown away something real for something fake, and it had taken a con man to help her realize the difference. The settlement negotiations should have been straightforward. Zoya had agreed to admit fault, accept a reasonable division of assets, and stop her family's campaign against me. But I'd underestimated Vera's determination to control the narrative. Tuesday morning, Tom called with bad news. Zoya's attorney wants to renegotiate, he said. They're claiming she was coerced into admitting adultery and that her emotional state makes any agreement invalid. She wasn't coerced. She discovered the truth about her boyfriend and realized her position was hopeless. That's not how they're spinning it. They're saying you manipulated the situation to humiliate her, and that she agreed to the settlement under duress. I felt my anger rising. So we're back to square one? Not exactly. We still have all the evidence of adultery and fraud. But they're going to fight it, which means a public trial with all the dirty details aired in court. Maybe that's what needs to happen. Are you sure? A trial means months of legal fees, public testimony, and media attention. Your daughter will have to testify about her mother's affair. That stopped me cold. Dasha had already been through enough. Forcing her to testify in open court about her mother's betrayal seemed cruel. What are they offering? 50-50 split of assets, shared custody, no alimony. But they want you to agree that the divorce is based on irreconcilable differences, not adultery. So Zoya gets to save face while I absorb all the financial costs of her affair. That's the deal. I told Tom I'd think about it, but I already knew my answer. After everything Vera's family had put me through, I wasn't going to let them rewrite history to make themselves look better. Wednesday evening, I got an unexpected visitor. Dasha answered the door and came to find me in the garage. Dad, Grandma Vera's here. She wants to talk to you. I found Vera in the living room, looking more subdued than I'd ever seen her. She was alone, which was unusual. Vera rarely went anywhere without an entourage of family members or supporters. Rhett, she began, I think we need to clear the air. About what? About this situation with Zoya. Things have gotten out of hand. I sat down across from her. You started a campaign to destroy my reputation and business. Now you want to clear the air? I was protecting my daughter. Any mother would have done the same. Any mother would have found out the truth first. You never asked me for my side of the story. Vera's expression tightened. Your side was obvious. You were abandoning Zoya during a medical crisis. I was divorcing her for adultery. There's a difference. That man was taking advantage of her vulnerability. She wasn't thinking clearly. She was thinking clearly enough to forge my signature on school documents and lie to everyone about her medical condition. Vera was quiet for a moment, and I could see her struggling with the reality that her daughter had been deceptive. What do you want from us? She asked finally. I want the truth acknowledged, in court, on the record. Your daughter committed adultery and fraud. Those are facts, not opinions. And if we agree to that, then we settle this quickly and quietly. Dasha doesn't have to testify, and everyone can move on with their lives. But Zoya's reputation? Zoya destroyed her own reputation. I'm just refusing to help her rebuild it with lies. Vera left without agreeing to anything, but I could see she was thinking. The prospect of a public trial couldn't be appealing to someone who valued social standing as much as she did. Thursday brought another complication. I was finishing a repair job when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Aleksei's name, which surprised me since I'd heard he'd left town. Hello, Rhett. His voice was tense, with an edge I hadn't heard before. I thought you'd left. I'm back. We need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss. We do. Meet me at Riverside Park in an hour. Come alone. The line went silent. I stared at the phone, wondering what Aleksei could possibly want. According to Zoya, he'd fled town to escape his creditors. Why would he risk coming back? I called Jacek and explained the situation. "Don't go alone," he said immediately. "This smells like trouble." He sounded desperate, not dangerous. Desperate people are the most dangerous kind. "I'm coming with you." Riverside Park was a small recreation area on the edge of town, with walking trails and picnic tables scattered among old oak trees. At 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, it was nearly empty. I found Aleksei sitting at a picnic table near the river, looking haggard and nervous. He'd lost weight since I'd last seen him, and his clothes looked like he'd been sleeping in them. Jacek positioned himself about 50 yards away, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to give us privacy. "You look terrible," I told Aleksei as I sat down across from him. "Thanks for coming." "What do you want?" "I want you to know that I never meant for things to go this far." "Which things? The affair or the plan to steal my wife's money?" Aleksei flinched. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" "I was in trouble, real trouble. I owed money to people who don't forgive debts. She was my way out." "So you seduced her?" "She was unhappy, lonely. It wasn't hard to make her feel special." The casual way he described manipulating my wife made my hands clench into fists. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need your help." I stared at him. "You need my help?" "The people I owe money to, they found me. They know I was planning to get money from Zoya's divorce settlement. Now that she's not going through with it, they want their money from me." "And?" "I don't have it. I thought maybe you could talk to Zoya, convince her to help me out." The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted me to ask my wife to give money to the man she'd had an affair with. "You're insane." "I'm desperate. These people will hurt me if I don't pay them. That's not my problem. It could become your problem, if they think Zoya has access to money through you." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. These people don't care about divorce proceedings or legal settlements. They just want their money." I stood up. "Then I suggest you find a way to pay them that doesn't involve my family." "Rhett, please, stay away from my wife, stay away from my daughter. If I see you near my family again, I'll have you arrested for harassment." I walked away, leaving him sitting at the picnic table. Jacek fell into step beside me as we headed back to our cars. "Interesting conversation?" he asked. "He's in debt to dangerous people and wants Zoya to bail him out." "Think he's serious about the threat?" "I think he's desperate enough to try anything." That evening, I called Tom and explained the situation. He listened carefully, asking detailed questions about Aleksei's exact words. "This could actually help our case," he said when I finished. "If he's threatening to involve dangerous creditors unless your wife pays his debts, that's extortion. Can we prove it?" Did anyone else hear the conversation? Jacek was there, but not close enough to hear everything. Next time, and there probably will be a next time, record the conversation. If he makes specific threats, we can have him arrested. You think he'll be back? Desperate people don't give up easily. He'll probably try a different approach next time. Tom was right. Friday afternoon, Aleksei called Zoya directly. I only knew about it because Dasha overheard her mother's side of the conversation and called me immediately. "Mom's on the phone with Lex," she whispered. "He's asking for money. She keeps saying no, but he's not giving up." "Where are you?" "At Mom's apartment. I'm supposed to stay here this weekend, remember?" I'd forgotten about the custody arrangement. "Are you safe?" "I think so. But Dad, he sounds really angry. Mom's crying. I'm coming over. Should I call the police?" "Not yet. Just stay in your room and keep the door locked." I drove to Zoya's apartment complex, a modern building downtown where she'd been staying since our separation. I could see lights on in her third-floor unit. I called her cell phone from the parking lot. "Rhett?" She sounded shaken. "Dasha called me. Are you okay?" Lex has been calling all afternoon. He wants me to give him money to pay off his debts. What did you tell him? That I don't have access to that kind of money until the divorce is settled. But he won't listen. Is he threatening you? Not directly, but he says his creditors might come looking for me if they think I'm responsible for his debts. That's extortion. We need to call the police. I can't. If this becomes public, it'll make the divorce even messier. Zoya, your safety is more important than avoiding embarrassment. Can you come up? I don't want to be alone right now. I found Zoya's apartment door unlocked, which immediately put me on alert. She was sitting on the couch with her phone in her hand, looking pale and frightened. Where's Dasha? I asked. In her room. I told her to stay there until you arrived. Has Aleksei been here in person, or just calling? Just calling. But Rhett, he knows things about my schedule, my routines. He's been watching me. What kind of things? He knew I went to the grocery store this morning. He knew what time I got home from work yesterday. He's been following me. That escalated the situation significantly. Aleksei had moved from phone harassment to physical surveillance. We're calling the police, I said. What if they can't do anything? What if it just makes him angrier? Before I could answer, Zoya's phone rang. The caller ID showed Aleksei's name. Answer it, I told her, but put it on speaker. Zoya's hand was shaking as she accepted the call. Zoya? Thank God. I've been trying to reach you. I told you, Lex. I can't help you. You can and you will. These people don't care about your personal problems. They want their money. I don't have access to that kind of money. Your husband does. That repair business of his brings in good money, and your family has connections. I gestured for Zoya to keep him talking while I started recording on my phone. Rhett won't help you, Zoya said. Not after what we did to him. Then you better find another way, because if I don't have $50,000 by Sunday night, these people are going to start looking for alternative sources of payment. What does that mean? It means they might decide that my girlfriend and her family are responsible for my debts. It means they might pay you a visit. That's not legal. These people don't care about legal. They care about money, and right now you're the closest thing to money they can find. Zoya looked at me with panic in her eyes. I nodded encouragingly, gesturing for her to keep him talking. I can't get $50,000 in 3 days, she said. Then you better figure out how, because the alternative is going to be very unpleasant for everyone involved. The line went silent. Zoya stared at the phone, her face white. Did you get that? She asked. I held up my phone, showing the recording. Every word. That's clear extortion and criminal threatening. What do we do now? Now we call the police and end this once and for all. The police took Aleksei's threats seriously. Detective Maria Santos listened to the recording twice, taking detailed notes about his exact words. This is textbook extortion, she said. We can arrest him immediately. What about his creditors? Zoya asked. What if they really do come after my family? That's a separate issue. But threatening someone to collect a debt is also illegal. If his creditors contact you, call us immediately. Aleksei was arrested Saturday morning at a motel on the outskirts of town. The police found evidence that he'd been conducting surveillance on both Zoya and me, including photographs and notes about our daily routines. He was charged with extortion, criminal threatening, and stalking. His bail was set high enough that he couldn't afford to pay it, which meant he'd stay in jail until trial. The arrest changed everything about our divorce proceedings. Monday morning, Tom called with news that Vera's attorney wanted to schedule an immediate settlement conference. They're scared, he explained. The extortion charges make their client look like a victim rather than an adulteress. They want to settle before this gets any more public. What are they offering? Everything we asked for: admission of fault, favorable asset division, primary custody for you. They just want this to end. The settlement conference was held Wednesday afternoon in Tom's office. Vera, Zoya, and their attorney, sat on one side of the table while Tom and I sat on the other. David Klein looked tired and defeated. My client is prepared to accept all terms previously discussed. Including admission of adultery? Tom asked. Yes. And reimbursement for fraudulent medical expenses? Yes. And a public statement correcting the false information that was spread about Mr. Vossin? Klein hesitated. What kind of statement? A simple acknowledgement that Mrs. Vossin was not abandoned during a medical crisis and that Mr. Vossin had legitimate grounds for divorce. Vera started to object, but Klein cut her off. Agreed. The entire process took less than an hour. After 18 years of marriage and months of bitter conflict, our divorce was settled with signatures on legal documents. As everyone prepared to leave, Zoya approached me. I'm sorry, she said quietly, for all of it. You deserved better. Yes, I did, but I'm glad you finally realized it. Will you ever forgive me? For Dasha's sake, I'll try, but it's going to take time. Zoya nodded and left with her mother and attorney. I stayed behind to finalize details with Tom. How do you feel? He asked. Relieved, tired, ready to move on. Any regrets about how you handled it? I thought about that question as I drove home. Had I been too harsh, too calculating, too focused on revenge rather than reconciliation? Maybe. But Zoya's betrayal had required a strong response. Her family's campaign against me had demanded consequences, and Aleksei's threats had needed to be stopped. I'd protected my daughter, my business, and my reputation. I'd exposed lies and held people accountable for their actions. Most importantly, I'd refused to be a victim. That evening, Dasha and I sat in the kitchen eating pizza and talking about the future. Are you happy it's over? She asked. Yes. Are you? I think so. It's been really hard watching you and Mom hurt each other. We weren't trying to hurt each other. We were trying to protect ourselves. I know. But maybe next time you could try talking first before you start gathering evidence and making plans. I smiled. Next time? You know what I mean. If you ever get married again, or if Mom does, or whatever, maybe try communication before you try war. That's good advice. I'll remember that. Good, because I don't want to go through this again. Later that night, after Dasha had gone to bed, I sat in the garage working on my motorcycle. The engine was finally running smoothly, all the broken parts repaired or replaced. Some things, I'd learned, could be fixed if you were patient and methodical. Others were too damaged to save, no matter how much effort you put into them. The key was knowing the difference. My marriage to Zoya had been broken beyond repair long before her affair started. We'd grown apart gradually, taking each other for granted until we were more like roommates than spouses. Her betrayal had been the final break, but not the cause of our problems. The affair with Aleksei had been her attempt to find excitement and passion. My response had been calculated and thorough. Neither approach had been particularly admirable, but both had been understandable. Now we could both move forward with our lives, hopefully wiser for the experience. I finished adjusting the motorcycle's carburetor and started the engine. It purred smoothly, all the mechanical problems finally solved. Some things could be fixed, others had to be replaced. The trick was knowing which was which.